Hello there. Hola. I've been practicing my Spanish a lot, so need to practice where I can. Welcome back to the Coach Harris Show. This is episode 6. I'm Harris Benjamin. Thank you so much for listening in. Today I had the great pleasure of chatting with my good friend, Stephen Antonelli. Stephen is actually a former manager of mine in the personal training world, and he shared some really, really good insights today. I think you're going to enjoy them quite a bit. Before his time as a fitness manager and fitness coach, Stephen was a singer, a dancer, an all-around musical theater performer, and he was quite talented. Still dabbles where he can, but his focus right now is on building his business and helping his clients. Today, Stephen and I discuss some really good topics when it comes to how to enjoy your fitness, how to make exercise not just something that benefits you in the gym, but benefits you outside of the gym, right? In your everyday life. We're talking fitness for everyday people. Finally, we really get into how to find what works for you in fitness and in other areas, right? Because fitness is something that is often generalized in a lot of ways, especially with what we see on social media. There's programs, diets, and things that are thrown out to the masses. But what Stephen does very well, and what I always talk about myself, is customization, personalization, and finding what works for you. So we talk about how to become more self-aware in this area and to find the kind of training styles and things that will make you happy and have fun with your fitness. All right. So without further ado, we're going to get to the episode. But one last thing, there's some great info down in the description below if you want to check it out. All things related to how I can better help you. If you enjoy this podcast, I love making it. I'd love to answer your questions. So look below to see how I can get your questions on air. If you want to join my email list, highly recommend it because I'm putting out more and more emails nowadays, almost every day. And I'm going to have free workouts, motivational tips, and quicker links to content that I put out elsewhere. So if you want to join that, if you want any other help, check below and I will be happy to help you as best as I can. All right. Finally, if you are enjoying the show, a 5-star review and a subscribe would be much appreciated on Apple Podcasts because that's going to really help the show grow. It's going to give me feedback to know that you are here, you are listening, and you are enjoying it. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Stephen Antonelli. Enjoy. What's going on, though? Catch me up a little bit more.
What else? Like, what has been happening since last we've seen each other,
It's been how long?
It's been almost about a year.
Wow.
Yeah. A year and a couple months.
I missed the beard and the tie-dye.
Still keeping it rocking still. It's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing much really has been going on. I've been really doubling down on, my training and my business and just kind of doing things solo as much as I can while also, still just, being more into the training business. I was trying to get into, my singing and my dancing and whatnot, but that will always be there and it can always, be a personality trait of mine. But I went back to school in March of last year. So I've been finishing my degree in exercise science and then continuing that to getting my master's in rehabilitative sciences and exercise and therapeutic exercise.
Wow. Very
so
cool.
Kind of just been going into that and just, education.
That's awesome. How has the school kind of coming back into school helped your training, career-wise, your own training? I mean, have you learned anything like applicable yet?
I can't say that I didn't learn anything.
Mm-hmm.
You can always double down and relearn and always keep learning, but it's more so of, okay, did I really know this or did I just kind of breeze through this buying my certification and just, try and pass the test before I could, get my certification. And now it's going back and doing these classes like kinesiology, anatomy, and physiology. I almost said philosophy. And realizing, oh, okay, I need to, be a little bit more aware of certain body parts and certain anatomy so that I know what the heck I'm talking about now.
Understood. Very cool. Okay. So what I would love to start off right off the bat with, because I know you're just ready to dive in. I want to know kind of your story as deep as you want to go with it, but let's keep it in the realm of like fitness, failures, anything that you think is relevant. Because I think somebody listening, right, could be a personal trainer like us. They could be looking for kind of that motivation with their business, or they could just be looking to stay consistent with anything and everything that we've tried to help people with. So if you have any words of wisdom, Mr. Steven.
Do I have words of wisdom?
I think you
Okay.
do. I think you do.
Where do I start? Um, so if we want to get started with where my backstory is,
Mm-hmm.
I've been training for almost 5 years now. I've been in the personal training business. Before that, I was a professional musical theater performer for 10 years. I grew up from Tampa, Florida. I moved to New York City about 7 years ago to continue my musical theater. I have 2 degrees in musical theater, one in performance, one in education. So, kind of musical theater was my bread and butter growing up. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I've always done. And when I moved to New York, I started to get into working out because even though I was taking dance classes 5, 6 days a week, yes, that was making my body better for dance and for, performing. But there was an aspect of, strength training that I used to do back home in Florida that I wasn't really prioritizing when I moved to New York. So I got a personal trainer. I worked with him for about a year, and he was also a musical theater performer and a trainer as well. So kind of he ignited my love for training and like fitness. And I was like, oh, if he can do it, I can do it too. He has this as his side job. Everyone in musical theater always has a side job, whether it be waiting tables or, the little ins and outs here and there. So I was like, oh, personal training, definitely. I can do this. I know how to move. I know how to talk to people. Let's do that. And kind of brought me down that path of, oh, well, I know how to be self aware with my own body when I'm dancing. How can I bring that into personal training as well? And then got me my first interview at Equinox. And my manager happened to also be an actor turned fitness manager.
Hmm.
And so she kind of saw herself in me a little bit. I would say she did, which led her to hire me. So that kind of brought into how I started my personal training career, even though I had absolutely no experience. I didn't train people beforehand. Um, I understood how to talk to people, like as in a choreographer. I knew how to lead a room. I knew how to direct people, but I didn't know how to coach people. And there's a difference in my opinion, of directing somebody and coaching somebody. So that kind of brought me, I needed to learn how to be a better coach and not so much a director or a choreographer kind of thing.
Amazing. So my question from that, so you could talk from like a coaching standpoint and from maybe the clientele's perspective, but you were kind of just thrown into coaching and you were learning on the job quite literally. How did you manage that? Like what felt like a pivotal point where you were like, I can start to understand, because you mentioned people's movements and how they control their body, and that must have been a big focus for you with clients. Like, was there a turning point when you realized I'm comfortable coaching this kind of stuff with people and people are learning really fast or they're getting better?
I think my turning point when I realized that I was a good coach
Mm-hmm.
was, I realized some of the cues that I got from my trainer and a lot of the different classes I've taken over the years. I used to do like boot camps and whatnot, and some of the coaching cues that they would give me, it kind of came back full circle when I had my first client. And I was like, I remember my coach telling me, for instance, for like the deadlift or something like that, like, squeeze your glutes on the way up or something. And I was like, okay, let me try this with my client. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I'm like, okay, client, when you're doing the deadlift, make sure to squeeze your glutes on the way up. And when the client was like, oh, wow, I really felt I felt my backside turn on when I was doing this. I was like, you did? What? Oh, do that again. See if you feel it again, see if that happens. So it's kind of like, I would say the process of me going through it myself helps me coach my clients better. And that's when it kind of was the turning point for me where it was like, oh, I still do this today. Like, I don't give any exercises to my clients unless I do them myself. And I know how it feels in my own body so that I know how to better coach my clients moving forward from that. because if I can do it and I know how to cue myself for something to work, I feel that it's going to help my clients as well because I've already, set the path for them, you know?
Yeah. Awesome. And as you said earlier, I mean, the movement is kind of your biggest focus with clients generally. Is that kind of the specific area of fitness that you like to address the most, like functional movement, being strong, being agile?
Yeah, I think my big, specialty, if we want to throw that buzzword out,
Yeah.
but it's like, but like my specialty is what are we doing in the gym that's going to better your life outside of the gym as well? Because I'm lucky enough to work in a gym that I'm there every day. So what I do in the gym also affects what I do in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas my clients, what they do in the gym has to also, better them outside of the gym as well. So what can we do here that when you leave, you can come back and tell me a story saying, "Oh, I brought my daughter on a 2 mile hike and I carried them the entire way and I wasn't as winded as I was when I did that a year ago." Or, I rode my bike down the bridge today and, I wanted to do it again because I felt like I didn't even do anything,
Mm.
before. So it's like, what can we do in the gym that can, what's the word I'm looking for? That can
Transfer to regular life, right?
Thank you. That's the word
Yeah.
transfer.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, what can we transfer outside of the gym as well, but also, still have fun in the gym too.
Exactly. And I think that's funny that you use the word buzzword, because that's something just all too relevant with whether it's with trainers trying to like find their niche, which I'm personally not always the biggest fan of. You can have many things that you work on with people because at the end of the day, no matter how specific your goal is, the real goal is to do what you just said, it's to enjoy your life outside the gym. Like even if you want to be a competitive weightlifter, it still comes to the rest of your life, right? The confidence, the whatever comes with that. Um, so your big focus really is just kind of whatever the client's going to respond to best and whatever they're going to be able to have transfer into the regular life. Like that's how you match them kind of at where they are.
Definitely, and yes, everyone walks into the gym with a goal in mind. And trust me, there is no wrong way to get a goal, but there are many different approaches, and it's finding the right approach that is going to match what your body is wanting, because your body tells you what it wants and what it doesn't want, even if you don't know those cues. But for having the outside perspective as a coach, I feel like I have been able to see what somebody's body is responding well to, even if the client's like, "Oh, I hate this move. I hate doing split squats. I hate doing reverse lunges." It's like, yeah, but your body is like, pushing so much power through this movement. You know, how can I, as a coach, get you to switch that, that switch in your brain to stop hating this? And how can we enjoy this movement so that it can better you outside of the gym as well?
Mm, that's awesome. So my next question is, let's say for the people that maybe previously to COVID, right, and to all of that's going on, they had a big obstacle in their life that was time, right? They would say, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that, but there's X amount of things in my life and I don't have the time to really commit to myself. And while that still could be true, people still have busyness in
Mm-hmm.
many, many ways. Time may be less of a factor for some as far as commutes and, a lot of people working from home. So what would you say to maybe one of your clients or people you've chatted to, or even yourself, if you struggle with this, like when time is less of an issue and people still are having trouble committing to themselves and being motivated? Do you have any thoughts there?
It's funny that we think that, because I've had this issue recently now where it's like, yes, we've been in this panorama pandemic for, how many months now. And our big issue was when a new client would come in, they'd be like, "Oh, I just don't have the time. I have to travel to work. I have to come back home. I have to feed the kids." And now, in my opinion, it's gotten worse because now that we have these situations where anyone is reachable by video camera now and by Zoom, that a lot of different companies are now saying like, "Oh, I'm just going to throw a meeting, in the next 15 minutes. Be ready," you have to be there. It's a very important meeting. So it's like now I feel so deep saying this, but time is a construct,
Go for it.
and
Yeah.
now everyone is just like at beck and call to be at a meeting or be ready on video. And I understand that a lot of people are like, I don't have the time, and get me. I understand that a lot now because we live in a day and age where anyone is reachable by phone, by computer, by iPad, by beeper, all those things, sidekicks. So it's like, when someone comes in and says, I don't have the time, first off, it's saying, I understand. I completely understand that you are telling me that you don't have the time. And that's totally true. And that's such an important fact to know. So, how can I, as your coach, as the third, the point of view outside of you, take your schedule and where can we find the time together? Because what I hear from you is saying, you say, I don't have the time. In my head, I hear, I haven't taken the time to prioritize what's important for me right now. And I'm a stranger to you. I know I am. You tell me what's important to you, what's not, and I will find the time for you, whether that be an hour, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes. Do you have 5 minutes to sit in a dark room and breathe? You know, what's the right amount for you to prioritize yourself first and create that snowball effect to make better changes down the line, because small changes make big movements. And we have to make those small changes in the beginning to
Mm-hmm.
get those bigger changes down the line. Don't look at, you can't already know what the painting is going to look like before you even started making the painting.
Yeah.
You have to make the colors, you have to get the materials, and you have to start the painting first before you can see the full painting at the end.
Mm.
It's a good analogy.
I'm
Ugh.
gonna we got to get some fancy quote colors and flashy lights on that. So something that I took away from what you just said, and this could be taken with somebody that's not currently working with a coach, right? Because most people probably aren't. But if you are, that's actually a really good point that I didn't think of, is that even if someone technically has the time on their calendar, if they are always anxious about somebody hitting them up and saying that there's going to have to be a meeting here or there's going to have to be a call here, and they have that kind of relationship with their work or with somebody else, then I don't have time, because you never know what's going to happen. So it's just a really chaotic period, And I think kind of coming from what you're saying is like, you have to be able to prioritize that time block in, even if you have a free calendar, but things are just popping in and you have no idea when, and on 15-minute notice, like if you can really just commit to yourself to put in 15 minutes on a calendar and tell your boss, your family member, whoever, like, this is my time and it's not moving. You have to have that conviction with your own time, then you can make it happen. But I think a lot of people understandably get kind of sucked into a lot of other commitments, and they think, okay, this is my 15 minutes, no one else is benefiting, so I can move it, I can cancel it, I can move it tomorrow. But that, like you said, snowballs into really, really bad things for weeks and months and years. So it's like the painting analogy, you could start really small, and that one little decision of, okay, boss, like I can't do it right now because you told me 10 minutes ago I have my own time planned. That is going to happen again now because you've confidently done it, and again and again. And then all of a sudden you're training daily. You are used to making time for your own things, and that escalates into a lot of good stuff. So it's really like those little moments matter a lot.
Definitely. And, a lot of people come into training thinking that they're going to have to spend 3 hours in the gym from their day. And they think they have to block off 3 hours to, do everything that needs to get done, get to the gym, work out, shower, get back to work. Where it's like, the smallest recommendation, the American College of Sports Medicine says it's like at least, 20 minutes,
Yeah.
a day. Letting people know that, hey, to live a healthy, maintained life only requires maybe 20 minutes of moderate exercise a day. That also, it takes away the unknown from somebody, because, a lot of these people come in with this beginner mindset and they're just like, I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. I'm about to be doing, 72 hours of working out while also doing, 60 hours of work a week. I'm never going to get any sleep. And then that just,
Mm.
there goes that negative spiral down the, that path.
Mm.
So letting someone know ahead of time, hey, just so even if we're not working together, moving forward, do you feel like you can commit to doing at least 20 minutes of moderate exercise a week? I'll give you a workout to do 20 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes that you can repeat on your own, just so that you can keep maintaining until it's time that you feel like you are ready to get training, and then someone's going to be like, 20 minutes of, it takes me 20 minutes to do my breakfast routine. I can do 20 minutes of anything. And then that gets them thinking, because you always want someone to say in their own words how they can succeed at something. You never want to put the words into, let me rephrase that, not so much put the words in their head, but you want them to, start that catalyst effect in their own brain. Because if you give them something attainable and something specific to their life, they're going to refer back to things that they've been doing. And they're like, oh, 20 minutes, takes me 20 minutes for a train ride. Like I can do 20 minutes of bird dogs and planks and whatnot. That sounds simple. It's like, cool. Now that I've started that effect, I'll come back to you later, see how that's been going, and then we can get started.
Very, very good. I like that you said you have to kind of put it into that person's own world and own words, and again, if because somebody might not have that person to have them help them with this, you can take the time to put it into your own perspective. If you hear 20 minutes and say, oh, that's not enough because of XYZ, challenge yourself to think about the other parts of your life that take, let's say, 20 minutes, and maybe make you realize how realistic that can be. Something I've been reading more about recently, which I think is really interesting, is how it's very common to hear time is our biggest asset, and everyone always talks about that, which makes a lot of sense. Time is something we can't get back. But I've been reading a lot about how that statement can be challenged, and how there might be something that might be more important than time as far as our biggest asset, and that's energy. So the idea is that, yes, time is something we can't get back. It's uncontrollable, right? It's a very big asset, but the energy in which we put into the time is even more important. Because, for example, right, it would be great to live to 130 years old, but if that 130 years was spent with moping around, terrible energy, not moving, not being friendly to people, all these bad things, it would not be a good life, versus a 70-year life where you're thriving, moving, energetic. Like that would be a lot better, I think. So to what you said about 20 minutes or even 10 minutes, it's like, it's not just that time that is so important. It's what you do in that time. Like if somebody really can't make 20 minutes a day, they could take 5 minutes or 10 minutes, like you said, and do something very focused, efficient, and like intentional with their body and their lung capacity, and get them breathing, and then move on with their day. And they could get a lot out of that. So it's more about, before you worry about the time that you're taking, is your energy spent properly as well?
Yeah, definitely. And, I would battle that statement just to say that, eh, people are different. Everyone's different,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, as much as you would want someone to understand, it's not so much the time, but also the energy. Even that alone can also um, worry somebody, because then
Interesting.
I think in my own, perspective, where it's like, if you tell someone, you only have 5 minutes to breathe, I don't think someone's going to sit there calmly and patiently trying to breathe properly for 5 minutes. They're going to worry about, am I doing this correctly? Did I get a good inhale? Did I get a good exhale? Oh my God, I'm at 3 minutes. I don't know if I'm breathing properly. My chest feels too tight. My stomach is not expanding as much as it should. It's like, take all that, pressure, I would say, out of it, and not so much even the energy, but it's just like, hey, 5 minutes, breathe however you want.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's quick inhales, don't pass out, but if you, inhale quickly for 5 minutes, cool, you did it. It's much more, goes back to the painting, analogy that I'm going to stick with, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, that one session is done. Check, looking back, like, cause boy, let me tell you, am I, a numbers person. I have an Apple Watch. I have a Whoop band. I have a glucose monitor. My bed is a smart bed that checks my, my sleeping. I wear blue blockers. I check my diet with my Fitness Pal. I would love to get rid of all. That's just me personally, though, because I love all that information. But for a lot of other people, can be very, very daunting, and create a
Mm-hmm.
lot more pressure to them. So it's finding what speaks to that person and what they would like to accomplish. You know, Instead of telling someone, you have to be efficient with the time that you're given. You know, Asking them, okay, I'm giving you a challenge of doing 5 minutes of mindful breath. What do you think you can do within those 5 minutes in regards to breathing?
Mm-hmm.
And having them state and you're going to get a lot of people that are going to be like, oh, well, I guess I could just sit there and breathe. It's like, cool, done. Not touching it. You said it, I'm out.
Mm.
I don't want to touch that. I don't want to finagle in any way, shape, or form. You've already said what you want to do in those 5 minutes. Do with it what you will. But then comes the line of, if you're not seeing changes, then you have to tweak things. you
Mm.
know so there's a difference to telling someone to be efficient with the time they're given and reassessing someone with the time that they've been allotted, and are they seeing changes with what you've been giving them.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of goes along with nutrition coaching, for instance. You give someone the nutrition recommendations of how many carbs, fats, proteins they should be eating. Are they seeing any changes? you know if they come back to you in a month and they're still at the same weight, or their body fat percentage has gone up, it's like, okay, I gave you these recommendations. We've been working on this together. What do we need to see change now? Because if our body fat percentage is not changing and our weight's not changing, how can we make that better together?
Mm.
How can we make that energy work for you?
I love it. Thanks for challenging that. That was helpful. So also, I don't think I was clear because that exactly embodies kind of what I was trying to say, but I think I said it much less smoothly than you did. So thank you. But I guess what I meant to say was for the people that are told a certain amount of time is better than nothing and they just disregard it because it doesn't seem like enough.
Hmm.
It's important to understand that if you chose to be or you wanted to be, you can be very efficient with a very little amount of time. And the energy is something that you can use to maximize a little bit of time if that's all you have. Then again, it's not to say that every single minute you have needs to be all in 100 miles an hour. Sometimes it's just go play for 15 minutes and move your body and that's it. But if you're at a decision of should I move at all or not because I only have 20 minutes, you can do anything and 20 minutes will be fine. It'll be better than nothing.
Hmm.
Or you can really go hard in 20 minutes and make it feel like an hour to some people. So that's important to at least recognize. But like you said, you can very, very much just kind of enjoy a certain amount of time and it's always going to be better than something else.
Definitely. And it goes back to, if you tell someone they have 20 minutes to better themselves, is that specific to that person? you know and that goes along with goal setting, where it's like you can tell everyone the same goal, but not everyone is going to do it because it's not specific to them. So if you tell person A, hey, go breathe for 5 minutes, and person A is like, 5 minutes, forget this, I'm out of here, I'm not doing this. Whereas like person B is like, I get 5 minutes to breathe, I'm doing this, 30 minutes a day. Watch me soar with 30 minutes of breath work a day, kind of thing. So it's like, is the challenge specific to that person? Because if it's not, then, having that conversation of, okay, what is specific to you? What speaks to you, and what uh, uh, catches your attention, you know?
I love it. So my next question for you is something that I really like to think about with fitness, and that is self-awareness, because like you just said, the most important thing is that whatever we're choosing to do is personal to us, because we can really, especially now, get sucked into seeing all of these flashy things that we could be doing and none of them are relevant to our situation. And then it's just like anxiety overload. So how do you help somebody increase their self-awareness when it comes to anything, or more specifically fitness? If they feel like, I don't know what works for me, I don't have anyone to help me, obviously a coach is very important, but if they don't have that, how do they start to understand self-awareness better to where they can start to fine-tune their program, their nutrition, and figure out what works for them?
It's so much of a catch-22 in my opinion when it comes to finding self-awareness, because like, the only way to find your self-awareness is to be self-aware, and it's so hard to tell someone to just be self-aware, do it, um, what I've been finding that helps the most is just being I'm so annoying with my clients, and I know they probably hate me for asking all the time, but it really does help them be more aware. And it's just me asking, or even have, like, if you don't have a coach, having an outside source asking you about your process and how it's going for you, having that, having your friend check in on you, asking, how's your workouts been going? How have you been feeling? It really does help you become self-aware in your own thoughts and when you're doing certain movements. And even with like nutrition, I check in with my clients very often asking like, hey, I saw that you had lasagna last night. How did that taste? What was the atmosphere like? What was the environment like? Were you cooking with somebody? Did you make it over the stove? Did you order out? Like, asking every possible question around the instance itself, so that the person has to answer it and has to think back to the exercise or the food that they were eating. Because then once they know that I'm going to keep asking them about it, they come into the next session and they're like, oh, Steven's going to ask me about my lasagna last night. Let me have that ready for him. And so when they come into the session, the only thing I ask them is, how you doing? Steven, I had the best lasagna last night. I cooked it with my grandma. We put thyme, we put basil, we put oregano in it. Oh my gosh. And we hand rolled our pasta. It's like, one, the constant battering that I'm going to give you asking about certain situations, but you can get that from your support group and your people around you as well, because hopefully you can find people that are curious and are interested in you becoming better. And that way, not only are you getting better with them asking you these questions, but hopefully you've created that snowball effect for that person asking you, because they're going to see how much joy or, pain that you get out of it, whatever, you're working on. And they're going to be like, Steven seems to be having a lot of fun doing those deadlifts in the gym. I wonder if I order a kettlebell online and it gets here in 4 weeks, I'll also have fun doing these deadlifts at home kind of thing. So it's like, oh, it creates that, that the snowball effect. And it's just like, it spreads to everyone.
Yeah. That seems to be such a repeating thing in all of this, is like some kind of snowball effect, right? Like little things just really, in whatever way, with food or with your training or with your committing to your own time, things can really just start to build and build and build, and then become very obvious. You can make a lot of impact from a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting question now. Something I think is kind of fun. I've been thinking about. I read this question recently, and it can be pertained to a lot. So let's start general with just fitness, and then maybe we can go to specific pieces if you like it. If you, and this is so general, but if you had 15 minutes 3 times a week to improve your fitness as a whole, what would you choose? And I'm sure there could be many answers, but
I mean, currently right now, my biggest things have been breathing.
Mm.
I do breath work pretty much 3 times a week for 5 minutes. So I would add at least 5 minutes of that. And now I have 10 minutes left. If I had to choose 10 minutes to do anything, it would probably be stretching my hips in any way, shape, or form. So doing like pigeon pose for at least 5 minutes, for doing that on each side.
Mm.
And then, If I had to choose another 5 minutes to do something else, I guess it'd be reading something. So it'd be 5 minutes of breath, 5 minutes of mobility, and 5 minutes of reading.
Interesting.
All in, yeah, if I could split it up.
Okay. Now, same question. If you were, let's say, stretching aside, like more traditional fitness stuff, cardio, lifting, if you had to make a program for yourself, that would be the most, for whatever your goals are, the most all right encompassing 15 minutes 3 times a week. How would you structure that?
Well, my current goals are currently just, decrease body fat and just gain strength.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my 15 minutes would probably be some sort of kettlebell routine for 15 minutes. That kind of hits all of the major moving patterns, not so
Mm-hmm.
much overhead, anything, but, um, I'll probably do a lot of deadlift squats with kettlebells and just kind of keeping it a circuit style for
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes.
Like a big flow or complex, so to speak.
Buzzwords,
That
flow,
works.
complex.
Buzzwords. I just got to throw them all in there. I know I don't like the buzzwords. Have you still been doing Olympic lifting at all? Or has that been a minute?
I've taken a step back from Olympic lifting because I've been focusing more recovery and regenerative. Cut that out. That's not a good word. Yep. But I've been focusing more on that a little bit. Olympic lifting, I kind of do it from time to time when I'm demonstrating to some of my clients, who are interested in doing it. So I will, still coach it from time to time, but I don't do it for myself now because I had to take a break because my body was falling apart because I was not focusing on, the recovery aspect of a lot of things. So I had to take a step back, and I'll probably get back into it in my next program.
Okay. Can you go back to the recovery part? Because I think that's might be important for a lot of people. Just if you have any thoughts with regard to that, for for the person that is now all of a sudden excited by fitness and they feel like, okay, I have the time, I can make the time, I want to go, and they want to do all of this stuff, but recovery potentially could be an issue because I know there's a lot of traditional programming saying, okay, take 2 days on, 1 day off, or have this amount of days off in a week, but sometimes we recommend our clients to train every day, but maybe some days are very smooth, right? There can be there can be a lot of variety in what somebody does throughout a week. So how do you
Mm,
balance, like, if somebody wants to move every day and do something, but making sure they don't beat up their body too much? What would you say?
definitely. Like, I love a client who comes in, they're like, look, I'm committed to working out 7 days a week. And I look at that client, I go, well, I'm only here 5 days. So, we're going to make it 3 days a week together. But it's also putting into the focus for them of what does recovery look like for that client.
Mm-hmm.
you know if a client walks in and they're very high strung, or they're sitting at a desk all day and they don't have time to get up and stretch, you know what's going to benefit them most might just be a simple mobility routine as recovery. Whereas somebody like a musical theater performer, for example, they're stretching all the time, they're in auditions every day, they're working at night, they don't stop moving, you know, maybe slowing them down might actually make them worse, and their body's like, what is this slow pace? I don't do this trash. Like, I'm not slowing down for this. Like, I don't want to do that. So finding recovery that matches their energy. There's recovery and then there's recovery training. So how can we still keep you moving at a low threshold and having your body, respond to these different weight volume, at a lower volume? And how can it still create that imposed demand on your body so that you are, ready to go for the next strong workout, whatever it might be?
Mm.
So recovery is not the same for everybody. Recovery could be 5 minutes of breathing, or it could be a 10-minute, kettlebell flow, with a light weight and doing, 3D pattern movements kind of thing. So finding what somebody's lifestyle is like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's, there's not, it's not set in stone. There is no set rules of what recovery looks like for people, but our bodies do give out signals telling it, hey, I like that. Hey, I don't like that. Let's do something else, because our body's going to be like inflamed and say, don't do that again, or else I'll send this signal out to you again. And it's not going to be as pretty the next time. So let's find something that's going to work for us.
Self-awareness, right? It keeps coming back to that. I mean, listening to your body, and that's another, like, maybe a buzz phrase, like listen to your body and just do that. But some people don't really know how to do that yet. And that's where practice just comes in, I mean, like with anything, the more reps you do, just like in musical theater, I'm sure the more reps you do, the more aware you are of where you are on stage, where your body is, where everything is, dancing. So with training and movement and recovery, like the more you just practice this stuff and make the time for yourself, it's going to get easier to implement, easier to be aware of. It's not always just going to be such a struggle. You're going to start to figure things out, and you're going to be able to understand how to kind of better use your time and your energy for what works for you, because you've just done it so much.
Definitely. And like in a while ago, meditation practice I learned when I was doing my meditation practices on Headspace, like noting and noticing
Mm-hmm.
is like the number one practice you start off with. And that can be taken into so many different aspects as well, not just meditation. The minute you get yourself under a bar and start doing barbell back squats, doing a couple of them, stopping and saying, okay, what do I feel? Where do I feel it? Do I like that feeling? Did my body like that feeling? Can I replicate that feeling when I also put some weight on the bar? You know, does this feel better from a back squat to a front squat? You know, I understand a lot of people can't work with coaches as much as I would love to work with everybody, but even doing that for yourself is so beneficial for yourself too, because it's creating that self-awareness, because the next time you go back and do it again, you're going to have that little cornerstone in the back of your mind that says, last time I did this, I didn't really feel my left hip as much as I do today. What did I do differently today that I didn't do last week? Oh, okay. I didn't foam roll before I did. Okay. Let me remember next time that I need to foam roll, or I need to stretch out my left hip a little bit more before I get underneath that bar, so that I don't feel this again, because that didn't feel so good. So how can I change that?
Mm.
And that creates that self-awareness, snowball effect.
Yeah. So taking the time to do that, what would you say to the person that, again, might benefit from taking the time to become aware of their body, but they're kind of in that cycle of they just want to do just fast classes and they want to move fast all the time and just sweat and sweat and sweat, but they haven't really taken the time to understand the movements and how their body responds to different things? How would you encourage somebody to start to at least try a little bit of, not necessarily slow things, but kind of being aware of different movements and not just go, go, go all the time with fitness?
Of course, and that brings back to, how is that working for you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, looking back on everything you've done, going back to your goals and reassessing, you said, in theory, you said you wanted to lose weight, and you've been go, go, going, you know, did you lose weight? No. Okay. Now we have to try a different approach, you know, and yes, I might be the outside perspective as well, but having someone be able to be honest with themselves and say, hey, you know, I've been doing Zumba for, 3 months now, and I haven't seen any effect. All I feel is my ankles, hurt a little bit more, and I'm starting to feel my shin splints flare up a little bit more now or whatnot. Maybe what I'm doing might not be the best approach of what my goals are. But yes, I feel great when I do Zumba. Oh my God, my girlfriend Jan is right next to me and she's hitting those moves with me or whatnot. But how do I get that same uh, happiness, but also still gaining my goals that I set for myself because I took the Zumba class, you know? So just being honest with yourself and saying, hey, maybe this isn't really working for me. instead of going to Zumba 7 days a week, maybe I'll try Zumba 4 days this week, or 3 days, and see how I feel after that. And if that's not working, heck, let me ask my friends, what are they doing? You know, I much don't like going on Instagram to finding workouts or anything, or TikTok or anything like that to find the workouts. But what are people doing on Instagram and on TikTok? And let me ask them, hey, I've been doing this. You seem to be having fun by doing this. Let me know what you've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, we live in, going back to the beginning, we live in a day and age where everyone's reachable by the internet and you can talk to anybody and everybody around the world. So use that to your advantage to help you as well.
Well said. How are you on time?
I'm fine.
I'm fine.
I'm off till 3 p.m. What's up? Let's go.
This is going to be buckle in, people. This is going to be about 6 hours long. No, it won't. But you got some questions on Instagram, right? Did you get more than just the one that was it that
Got like
one?
2. Yeah, it was just 2.
Let's stick with those two, the booty gains. So, Steven, you asked your fellow friends if they had any questions, and somebody asked how to grow a bigger butt. Was that the question?
It
Right,
is
I like
how
how we're
to
going from
how,
self-awareness to building a big ass.
look. These are the people they ask for me because apparently it's my go-to.
Why I
I don't
said it's
know.
go for it. That's your area.
I don't even like to be completely honest, a lot of people ask me these questions of how to get better legs, how to build a bigger butt, you know. And it's interesting because there's two sides to this coin where it's like I don't even know how I got them. So I don't know how to tell people how they're going to get them either. But also, your body may not want it.
Yeah.
And that's the hard truth to some people. I know they don't want to hear it, but sometimes your body does not want big or anything because it's doing just fine the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's much more so not how to build a bigger butt, but getting deep here on how to be happy with where your body is at, and how do I appreciate myself where it's at and where it can be and where it will go, and all the different directions that my body will go, and how can I improve upon myself on the areas that I don't specifically like for myself.
Yeah. That's like the real answer for it, is like there's no problem in wanting to have change in the way your body looks or to get stronger or to build muscle or to do anything, but you have to be it's not going to happen or it's not going to stick if it's coming from a lens of I need to get to that person's body. Because first of all, like the genetics part is really way underplayed sometimes, I mean, a lot of people talk about it, but a lot of people don't. And it's like you can get your best butt and your best arms and your best abs, but it's definitely not going to be like I'm not going to have yours or you're not going to have somebody else's. It's just not going to happen because it's your body doesn't want to do that. The structure doesn't fit. I mean, that's science, like our bodies aren't going to just magically turn into some completely different structure. So I think the more we can just forget the thought of trying to get to another person's physique, the more we can actually enjoy training and make ourselves look and feel better. So I think that's kind of step one, because if everything you do is to try and like compete with a different person's body, you're always going to be failing because it's never going to happen.
Definitely. And like competitiveness is totally healthy. Like,
Yeah.
go ahead, compete, love it, But what's going to be better for you is the journey that you took to get to where you feel your greatest and look your greatest, because you put in the work to do that for yourself, And my answer has always been, for anyone who's asking, how do I get better legs? How do I get a bigger butt? 10 years of musical theater performance. We're always looking for more actors. Get into a dance class and let's see what you pop out the other side, because that shit's intensive.
Oh, yeah.
But I also enjoy my body because I worked freaking hard to get it.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up 6 a.m. to start stretching, and then I would go into a 2 hour tap class, and I would go into a 2 hour ballet class, and then I would do 2 hours of musical theater, performance, and then an hour long voice class lesson, and then I would go into another 2 hour voice production class lecture as well. So it's like I was working intensively to get to where my body is at. Mind you, it might not be perfect, doesn't do everything that I wanted to do still, but you have to enjoy putting in the work and having fun doing it. Therefore, you can be happy with where your body is. It's not to where your body becomes, it's the path that you took to get to that you're going to appreciate more, and not the outcome at the end.
100%. And I say this a lot of times to people as well with, let's say, weight loss, for example, because that's such a common thing. And people are like, oh, I'll be happy once I lose those 10 to 15 pounds. And I'm not saying someone might not be happier if they're a little leaner. It's possible. But imagine if at this very moment, right, let's say somebody was very overweight and at this very moment, they didn't do any work, nothing changed, but they just got lean, right? Like it would be nice. It probably like the way they look. They would feel good for a little bit, but that wouldn't stick to the way that people think it's going to stick. They're not just going to feel like a whole new person forever just because there's a little fat off their stomach. It's going to be the days, the weeks, the months of focusing on your nutrition. Like you said, getting up at 6 a.m. if you have to, maybe not, but if you have to, going to the gym, going for walks, like failing, trying again, that kind of work, when you start to see the changes happen, like you look at your body and you think, this is a result of all of the work that I put in and all of the sacrifices and the effort, or investments, better than sacrifice, like you're investing in yourself, all of that. So that's why people are usually proud of certain bodies, because they've worked really hard to shape things. So I think knowing that that's really the goal, not just the actual like end result, is important. And
Mm-hmm.
also when you, like we talked about earlier, when you compare yourself to other people, yeah, there's a lot of people out there, models and Instagram people that look amazing, that might have worked their asses off to get there. So that's awesome. But there's a lot who didn't. There's a lot of genetic people who just look really good. Like they might
Mm-hmm.
just be really good looking, have pretty lean stomachs, and they might like do a couple classes, but they don't train. They might not train hard. They might not eat well. So it's really not aspirational, because you don't know how they got to that point. It's literally just a kind of a body that formed. So you have
Definitely.
to
And,
understand.
it's, asking that person, what their goals are, and they say, 10 pounds off and I'm going to be happy. Okay. I have a pill right here. This pill is going to take 10 pounds off of you. Now what?
Mhm.
Now what are we working on? You know, I've given you the pill that has taken away those 10 pounds to make you happy. You're happy. Now what are we working on? Because those 10 pounds might have made you happy today, but down the line, we need to be working. I'm not saying we need to, let me not speak for everyone, but our bodies love patterns, and our minds love to solve problems for us. And if we're not giving our body problems to solve, it's going to make up some problems to solve, and that's not going to be fun in the long run. So how can we keep training our body to overcome any obstacle that we put in its way by continuously working on smaller objects and objections that come in our way to solve them? You
Yeah.
might lose these 10 pounds now, but down the line, maybe your body might get some kind of hormonal dysfunction or something. you know are you doing enough cardio to regulate your body's hormone responses? Are you lifting? Are you giving your body enough threshold to overcome? Maybe you might be at a concert and you have to push through people because you want to get to the front of the stage because you really like this person who's performing. Does your upper body strength have enough force to elbow somebody in a mosh pit to get to the front? Or are you just going to be sad Sally in the back, barely able to hear the radio back there? So it's like, how can we continuously train ourselves to overcome this thing we call life, for any obstacles that get put in our way, and not just being happy right now because we lost that 10 pounds? How
Exactly.
do we continue to be happy, continue to have fun, no matter what gets put in our way?
Exactly. And I mean, wouldn't you agree that a lot of times people or ourselves, I've struggled with this in the past as well, is like you'll think, okay, when I get to this place with any goal, any physique or strength or anything, go, when I get to this place, I'll feel a lot better. But when that time actually comes, everything is shifting with you, right? Now, at that time, you're thinking, okay, when I get to the next place, it's not like you're getting closer and closer mentally. When that's the mindset, it's just, it's always a month ahead. It's always 6 months ahead. I'll eventually be happy in 6 months when I lose this or when I gain this or when I do this. So it's like, when does it end? I mean, if you're always just thinking about the next thing, you have to also be able to appreciate where you are now. Like, it is important to have the goal, but you have to be able to appreciate, like, okay, I'm happy with my body. I like myself. I like my training. I love what I'm doing every day. And I want to lose weight and I want to get stronger. Cool. But if it's, I hate myself right now and I'll love myself then, it's not going to just magically happen. There's always going to be that struggle unless you work to be okay with kind of what's going on right now.
Definitely, it benefits to be able to see the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
It's bringing this back to musical theater as a director. You have to be able to look at the stage and know where all the actors go and know where the set's going when the dances are happening, and be able to sit in the back row and go, okay, this is the performance that I have in front of me. But understanding how this performance happened is the bigger picture of the big picture, which is weird to say. So it's like, when it comes back to like fitness, yes, you might set goals for yourself saying like, okay, in 3 months, I want to lose 10 pounds, big picture, but understanding the smaller journey that happens underneath it helps you appreciate that bigger picture even more. Because if you just get to the big picture and there's no storyline underneath it, it's not going to be a really good show.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a very basic show where it's just curtain up, curtain down, the end, applause, cool, you know. Whereas you want a performance that has all these flourishes and all these dances and marvelous lights and everything that goes into this giant production. And that's what you need to work on, is how do I make a giant production of myself by focusing on the smaller steps that took to make that.
Mm.
And yes, it does change. It everything is always changing. You set that goal for yourself saying like, hey, in 3 months I want to lose 10 pounds. You focus on the smaller goals, all of a sudden you've lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks. I don't know, let's say that. But it's like, well, shit, well, what do I do now? I've already lost my 10 pounds, so it's like, and I have 2 more months to go. I guess I'll pick this up. So that's when it comes into realization of what your body can actually do, and understanding that it can do more. Like me personally, I psychologically hold myself back from powerlifting some of these heavy weights that I'm working on. I hit 400 pounds in a deadlift recently that I never thought I was going to be able to do, and it was smooth as butter, and it freaked me out. And I was like, oh shoot, what? I can do 400? Like, no, like I did 315 like 2 years ago, and I thought my spine was going to fly out of my backside. I felt crazy.
Mm.
Like when my program said do 400-pound deadlift, I was astounded when I did it. And I like that I appreciated the journey I took to get there and how easy it felt, because now it has me even more hyped for what's to come next. Because if I hit 400 that easily,
Mm.
maybe 500. I don't know,
Five
you
plates.
know. So it's like appreciating the work that I put into it to make this task seem so easy and so fun gets me even more hyped for what I can challenge my body to do now.
Yeah, 100%. I've been really bigger even lately on the idea of action goals versus outcome goals, And I mean, again, always having both. It's not that it's good or bad to have both or have neither, but simply having an outcome goal on fat loss or on a deadlift number or on a specific metric really has its limits because it doesn't focus on the actual work that's there, you know? So I feel like I would advise myself in my younger years and a lot of people and other people that are struggling to focus more on the action goals, right? Like what do you actually need to do to start feeling again thriving and excited and like you're moving in the direction that you want, you know? So for you for that deadlift goal, I'm sure even though the outcome was to get stronger, the actions you were doing every day, you know, you were going to the gym, you were lifting, you were getting a lot of protein, you were resting, you were recovering. So it's like when you start focusing on the actual day-to-day actions in smaller pieces, like you said, little pieces, you can stay motivated easier, you can stay more excited, you have things to check off the list, you feel like you're really always working towards it, and then you get really proud of all those little things that you've done, the hundreds of actions, and then the final picture is great, but then it's the next thing. So it's really about like the actual work day to day, you know?
Yeah, because even if it's not so much like action goals in the gym, but just action goals for yourself. You know, these habit trackers have been around for a long time now, and they come and go for a lot of people, but these habit trackers do great for the psychology of yourself and also for just the physical um, practice of checking something off and completing it. You know, psychologically just gives you such a serotonin boost that it's like your brain just goes nuts for completing something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though our brains can't see what we're doing, it gets that reaction from our sight and from our physicality of doing something, and our brain goes, no, did he just complete something? Oh my gosh, oh, I love that feeling. Oh my god, I want that again. Oh, that felt great. Holy Christ, like I just want that again. And then our brain will find ways to continue doing that for us because it understands, hey, you know, I got some really good hormones off of that last, high, that you just had. So how can I repeat that in other things that we do throughout life? You
Mm-hmm.
know, can I appreciate that when I'm waking up in the morning? Can I create that when I'm going to bed at night? Can I create that when, I'm, taking a shower or something, So it's good to have these small goals and completing them because it will just create such a landslide effect after that.
100%. My college roommates would always make a lot of fun of me. I think it was justified, but I would make to-do lists or my goals list in college, and I would actually write with a little circle next to it to check off wake up. And I would wake up, which is hopefully like you don't even have to try, right? And I would check it off, but I would start my day saying, okay, cool, I checked one thing. And then the next thing was like eat breakfast, and I checked off, cool, a little momentum. And then when I get to actual hard training session or studying or something real, I've checked off like 6 things and I feel like, okay, I just want to keep checking, keep checking. So it seems silly sometimes, but those little, very specific actions, like you said, with whatever part of your life are paramount to getting to anything bigger, you know? And like you could just, some people say, like, oh, I'm not going to worry about all that stuff. I'm just going to big things only on my list. But having little things that you feel like you're winning at can really create a lot of good momentum.
Definitely. And also finding the right amount for that person,
Mm-hmm.
even if someone says only the big things, okay, check off the big things. See how that helps you. You
Yeah.
know, if your big thing is, 400 pounds, I don't think you're going to be doing that every day. But if you can check that off at least once a week or something, awesome. But finding that big thing for you specifically, finding anything for somebody specifically is gold, in itself. So even if, I know a lot of people might look at like checklists daily and they're just like, I don't have enough brain capacity for that. Fine,
Mm-hmm.
fantastic, move on. I don't want you to do it then,
Exactly.
bad idea. Let's
Yeah.
find something else that's better for you.
All in the lens of what works for that person 100%. So it's like, and the only reason I'm saying that for me is because I've tried other things. And sometimes that also doesn't work for me, you know? So there's also, I think it's important to realize what might work for you now might not always. You know, we go in cycles, there's seasons of life, and there's a lot of times when you just might not be in a headspace to be ready for something like that. or it might be too much or too little for somebody. Sometimes in my own fitness, I've done really well by only thinking about really, really big goals, like things that seem impossible, because then it just makes me push for things that I didn't think I could do, and I start doing work that I didn't expect to do, and it happens. Some
Mm-hmm.
other times I have those big goals and it's overwhelming, and I'm like, this is just not going to happen. So I have to make very specific things to check off, and that's it. So
Mm-hmm.
everyone not only has a different thing for them, but that might change over time. So you have to always kind of be willing to reassess and to adjust and kind of see where you're at, because again, I think I've worked with a lot of people, and I'm sure you have as well. And I've struggled with this in the past too, is sometimes we're just so, for lack of a better term, busy, but we're just so bogged down by real things, family. Some people have kids, they have huge work deadlines and actual things that matter, like financial issues. It might not be the best time to go for 30 pounds of weight loss and PR in your deadlift and having like a marathon. You
Mm-hmm.
might just try to walk when you can and stay active and not eat like a complete asshole,
Mm-hmm.
things you can control. And then there's some times where you might have the headspace and the life situation to be able to push a little bit harder, and that might be your time to really go for things that you've wanted to go for. So I think I really empathize with people that are struggling and are also trying to get really fit and do these extreme things. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not saying you can't do it. You totally can, but it might not be the best time to go all in on fitness and all in on this and all in on this.
Mm-hmm.
Like sort out these things, kind of clear some things out of your plate, figure out yourself a little bit, and then you can start to build in more extreme fitness measures. I think it's important to be aware of that too.
Definitely, but it's also like, um, you don't want to shoo people away because you want to work with them, but like saying like,
Mhm.
hey, you have a lot on your plate, and I can see that, and I commend you for being able to do all of these things and, still keep a head on your shoulders. So good for you. So what can we do together to keep that head on your shoulders and take baby steps towards one of those goals that you may have?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like like throwing this out in, hyperbole land, but it's just like, you say you want to lose 30 pounds, and I see that you're constantly playing with your kids every day. Your kids are going to get older. They're going to want to do more things. So what can we do to help strengthen your body, to help keeping you playing with your kids? And let's see if we can't, make some weight loss goals while we're at it.
Yeah.
That will come down the line. Let's say, your kid's probably like what, 30 pounds right now, whatever. Let's see if you can do some overhead presses at 50 pounds for 12 reps as a goal for you, and keep that movement looking good, so that when your kids do get older and they do start gaining a little bit more weight, you're already ready for them. You're ready to bench press them before they're teenagers or whatever. So it's like, how do we continue? We don't have to set goals. We can just talk about getting you looking better, but let's continue that so that you're not blindsided for whenever something does come your way.
Yeah. I love what you said about making first of all, just implementing
Your
performance
microphone
goals
keeps cutting
over.
out.
You all good?
You sound good now.
Yeah. So I love what you said about making somebody's performance goals based around their specific life. I mean, very specific, like how much their kid weighs to what movements they want to do with their kid. Okay, let's make that your strength goal so you can do that. Um, of course, I think very important to have performance goals instead of just weight loss or muscle gain, because again, it comes back to what can you do in your life and can you do that well and can you enjoy it? Um, and I think that's such a good tool to make training more fun. Like you said so many times earlier today, it needs to be, it's not always going to be fun to, like, sometimes you're not going to enjoy the workout, but generally speaking, you should be excited to be able to move and to lift and to train. So how can you make what you do exciting? And I think by matching your training to what you like to do in your real life and what you want to be able to do, it can be motivating. I worked with somebody for quite a while who he was motivated enough, and he came to see me, and he was very hard worker, but he wasn't that excited by a lot of stuff. He was kind of like, eh. And I got to figuring things out, and he loved hiking with, I think, his soon to be wife. Like they would go on hikes, they would play around and mess around. So I started to make his performance goals based on her body weight. Like, you can lift one of her, you can lift
Mhm.
1.2 of her. And he was like, oh, that's awesome. Because then they would be at a party and he was like, look, I can like lift her over my shoulder. And he would have these fun goals that were just so specific. So I'm like, all right, our goal is 1.4, insert her name, you know? So it's like, it doesn't, doesn't have to be a traditional method of 3 sets of 8 progressing linearly over the weeks, right? You can do something really seemingly stupid and random, but to you, it might make things super fun. And if you're doing the work and that makes you excited, like, that's what you should do. So that's how I think people should go about finding what works for them, is like, what in my life can I be better at? And don't be afraid to be super specific with that.
Yeah, but it's like 100% what you said. Like, you have to be specific and you have to relate it to yourself for it to be stimulating and exciting and fun, or else you're not going to want to continue doing it,
Mm-hmm.
because then it's not relatable to you and it's not something that you want to achieve. Um, I had a same instance with a client that she has 2 kids, and she, they're both before kindergarten, pre-K and everything. And I would have her lift a weight and I was like, how'd that feel? She's like, oh, that felt pretty easy. I was like, that weighs more than your kid. Okay. And you just did that 10 times. So when you go home, you go take your kid and you lift him 10 times and see how that feels. And you'll see how much fun your kid's having, and you'll see how much fun you both are having. And you'll realize kind of what we're doing in the gym also relates to things that we are doing outside of the gym as well.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a really interesting quote the other day that we did not evolve to go to the gym, as human beings. Um, and it's true, we did not evolve to go to a gym to work out. So what can we do in the gym to better our lives outside of the gym as well?
Well said. Where'd you hear that? Do you know? I think I've heard
So,
things like that, but
so many podcasts that I listen to,
it was just
such
like,
amazing people like, Dr. Chatterjee and like Drew Prowett and all those people that they interview. And it's just like all of their, wise tales that I've heard that are just like gold.
yeah, I like that. Um, Anything else that you like? What are you working on right now in terms, again, whether it's just you personally or with clients or with your own fitness? I mean, is there anything that you've just been learning that you think is fascinating, or lessons you've been really big on that you think would be important to chat about with anything?
Well, the big thing that I'm on right now, I've been doing education with Postural Restoration Institute with myokinematic restoration. But that aside, the thing that I'm very much, I guess, geeking out over is how asymmetrical our bodies actually are. And this concept of we want everything to be symmetrical when our bodies are not symmetrical, and coming to terms with that too. A lot of clients walk in and they go, oh, my right shoulder's, a little bit higher, my left shoulder's a little bit lower, I creak my head to the right a little bit, kind of thing. It's like, yes, because our bodies are not symmetrical.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, as a whole, we all need to understand that and get it through our thick skulls that not everything is going to be symmetrical, but dang, am I going to try my hardest to get things to at least move symmetrically in a way, because our bodies, just everything is not, left and right. Our left side sits a little bit higher. Our left lung sits a little bit higher than our right lung. I might be saying this wrong. I can't remember now, because of the way that our organs are set underneath it. So it's like, understand that yes, things may look a little asymmetrical because everyone does, and it's fine and it's perfect. But if we're not moving symmetrically, then that's when we have to kind of, take into effect of, okay, how are your muscles moving? What can we make stronger? What needs to be, inhibited a little bit? What needs to be, decreased a little bit, so that we're not constantly getting that pain on our left side or constantly getting that pain on our right shoulder, kind of thing. So that's kind of my geek zone right now, is just like understanding that people might move asymmetrically, but understanding what's going on underneath everything and being able to help in a way that will make us move symmetrically.
I love that you went there with that. The idea that it's okay to have literal asymmetries. I mean, I think so many times we'll like, or I have focused on that. Like, okay, is my chest a little bit higher? Like, how do I work this part of my chest, or how do I like compress things down to adjust, and all these like just frantic thoughts of how do I do fix this, but it's like I'm not broken, and neither you or anybody else. It's just, again, if there's pain, if there's injuries on the way, if there's things happening that are warning signs, that's not good, and you can make it better. But if it's just like, okay, I feel awesome, I'm strong, I'm enjoying everything, but this side's a little bit lower, or maybe I'm getting 3 reps less on this lift on one arm, like that's not the worst thing in the world. And that's actually probably very normal and intentional, from our bodies. Because if everything was 100% like balanced in all ways, it just wouldn't work. So I think, again,
Definitely.
that comes back to like the little bit of information that we start to learn about our bodies can help with a lot of things down the road. When we understand that basic fact, it relieves a lot of stress and pressure. So that's a good one.
Definitely. But it's just like also goes back to the self-awareness as well. Even that itself is just being self-aware with your own body. And yes, if there's pain with an asymmetry, okay, then that needs to be referred out. Then we need to pay close attention to that. Why is there pain? What's going on around it? How can we better that? But if it's just an asymmetry and you noticed it, thank you so much for noticing that. I'm glad that you noticed that. I will keep an eye on it, moving forward in our training programs. But it's just, if there's no pain, don't touch it. Our body's doing something correct. When our body feels pain, that's our body telling us, hey, something's not moving right. Can you stop that?
Yeah, 100%. All right. I think the final thing that I have, unless, I mean, we can go on to whatever you want, but I think one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to do this today is because I get very inspired by hearing about people's challenges in any area and then kind of how they've gotten through it, because I think, and it seems to be getting better with a lot of people putting some really great stuff out there, but I think there's a lot of, again, noise with anything we want to learn with, like you said, there's so much information, and it's nice to see where people are successful and all these amazing kind of metrics that people are achieving. But what I get inspired by, at least, is when I see someone who is successful in their own way and they've had a really tough road, or they've had big things happen that have thrown them off and they've found ways to get back. That's like, because that's what everyone really relates to. It's like, all right, I'm struggling. How did you get out of that struggle? I want to do the same thing. So are there any things, again, fitness or bigger picture or anything else that you think are notable that you've really been hit by or struggled with that you've found a way through?
I think it comes down to my career mostly.
Mm.
I've felt like I've had to restart my business 3, 4 times, in this personal training world. First starting off, as a musical theater performer, I was doing shows left and right. I was going across the country doing shows. I was out in Colorado, I was up in New Hampshire, I was down in Florida. I was constantly doing shows. And then there came a time when there was just a dull period, and that's when I kind of got into personal training. So going from this constant paycheck to no paycheck for at least 6 months was very hard for me. Um, and then I grew into personal training where I found my niche, where it was just like, you know, I may not be the smartest person sometimes, but I know how to talk to people, and that's 80% of the job sometimes. Is
Mhm.
just at least talking to someone during a training session, because that's what they need most of the time sometimes.
Definitely.
Um, but even after that, I've moved around a lot for 3 times now. And having to restart my business, I think, has been my biggest overcoming constantly. Because no matter where I go, I know that I can start a business, and I know that I can make it lucrative and productive. I just know that I have to put in the work to do it. And there does come a time when I have to buckle down and talk to everybody and talk to, about anything just to get a new client, you know. And I think the number one takeaway when it comes to having to restart my personal training business constantly is, you know, not worrying about the, it goes back to it again, not worrying about the bigger picture
Mm-hmm.
and understanding the journey that it takes to get there and giving yourself those smaller goals along the way that will pay out in the long run, whether it be everyone who wants to start these new online training programs and like, oh, I want to make six figures in the next month and whatnot. It's like, I just want a new client. I'd like somebody new to talk to, you
Okay.
know, something simple. I love all the clients that I have, but I'd love a new one. I want a different perspective. And that's where my goals are different when it comes to my business, because I don't think of the money aspect, but I selfishly think about, I want to meet somebody new and learn about their life, you know, and I want to know where they've been, what they've been doing, what they want to accomplish, and how I can help them accomplish that along the way. Because it kind of goes back to my musical theater background, where I would get on stage, I would do my dances, I would sing my songs, and afterwards I would say goodbye to all the patrons who came to see the show. And hearing them compliment my performance was me knowing I was successful, or hearing the clapping at the end of a song, was my success for that day. And I never understood that I could also get that same feeling while personal training as well, because hearing somebody reaching their goals, or somebody coming back to me after a session and saying like, oh my gosh, my legs feel like they're so good right now. Like they've never felt like this before. Or, oh my gosh, I did a push up at home just for fun and I did it and I didn't buckle under my own weight. Like I've never had that happen before. And like hearing those success stories make me feel better as a trainer, because I love when somebody succeeds at something, because it's just, I know that I have given them the tiny little seed to go plant that plant for themselves. And I think that's kind of been my big overcoming of just, you know, I want to help people in whatever they give me, but I want them to enjoy it along the way as well.
Hmm. I'm inspired. I'm pretty inspired. That was great. Anything else? That's about all I have for you, but I want to know if there's anything else you want to share or any other cool things going on.
No, nothing really much going on. I pretty much hit everything that I kind of feel like I'm a pro at, that I wanted to talk about. Nothing really going on for me, just creating content for the Instagram. I downloaded a TikTok, and that's I've been watching more than creating, so I need to, change
Switch
that up.
switch the balance a little bit. Where do you want, if you want people to say what's up to you or know what's going on with you, where do you want them to do that?
My Instagram, which is just my name, Stephen Antonelli, all one word. My TikTok is, I think, the real Stephen Antonelli, because somebody stole my name. Weird.
I was gonna say, are you not real on Instagram? What's going on there?
Apparently, these fake ones are stealing my name. Even Stephen Antonelli 1, Stephen Antonelli 2. Apparently, there's other people. But I chose the real Stephen Antonelli on TikTok. I only have 2 videos. Don't worry. They all go to Instagram anyways.
Are they dancing
Yeah,
videos?
Instagram's kind of my go-to of contacting me.
Fitness or dancing on TikTok?
Oop, uh-oh. You cut out again.
No audio.
There you go. There you are.
I was asking if your TikTok is more fitness or dancing or both, because I guess that's a platform for both.
I mean, it's whatever. It's mostly fitness things that I've been posting so far, but whatever I'm inspired to do, it will be on there.
I love it. Well, hopefully let's do this again sometime when there's more things that come up in our lives we can chat about.
I always have anything to talk about, so you pick a topic and I'll talk about it.
And I'm free in 2 hours. We'll hop back on.
I'm not. I actually have a meeting at 12.
Just kidding. Me too. All right. Thanks so much, Steven. I'll talk to you soon, man.
All right. Thank you, Harris.
Bye bye. Thanks for listening, people.